Hey, hey, hey.
Hello.
Is it Wednesday
Hey,
again
ladies.
already?
Right. It's Water Cooler Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it's another wonderful day for us to talk all about real estate, right? So,
Yep.
it's me, Dion Branch, Real People Realty. And with me, I have my co-host. Let me see if I can point to her correctly.
You got it. Lisa the lender, house money mama in the hizzy from Geneva Financial. How's everybody doing?
Hello.
Yes, yes. Last week we talked all about investing, and so we had Curtis Monday with us. He gave us some great tips about investing, and so we want to make sure that we continue to educate you on the things that you need with investing. So this week we asked Ljubica Popovic to come join us. And so Libby is an attorney at Caputo and Popovic. So Libby, welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me on another Water Cooler Wednesday.
Yes, yes. So Libby is wonderful, a great attorney that's part of my team that we if you buy, sell, she's definitely somebody that I always refer you to. So
You.
we
And
want
it's a great time to buy and sell.
Both, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So last week, Curtis, he talked about investing, right? And
So
so
many different things he talked about. Oh my goodness, we got a lot of great nuggets out of last week. It was unbelievable. Like the comments and interaction was off the charts for real. And he gave us a lot of great information, but he also, with that information that he gave us, I think he gave us some questions too, right? Because some of the stuff that he talked about, I think it sparked some questions for some of our viewers and listeners, and also for us, just there's, I guess investing is not as simplistic as one might think.
right.
We see these TV shows and they make it look like it's so easy. Oh, just go and flip that house, like
Right. In 30 minutes.
Right.
In 30
Right.
minutes.
Don't you wish?
Exactly.
Well, that's what they make it seem like. It's 30 minutes. Like, wow, you don't have any problems or anything, right? But
Right.
we know,
No
we know.
legalities, nothing to be concerned about.
Right. No taxes, nothing.
Right.
Right. So, but one of the things he shared with us was about LLC, right? And so that's why, Libby, this topic is about LLC versus corps and corporations, right? Setting it up. So one of the first things that we have to do when we're starting our business is to start to decide like what we're gonna do, what we're gonna name it, how we're gonna file it, right?
Yeah.
So, Libby, what can you share with us?
So that's always one of the first questions when I meet with a client is to determine what kind of entity, what kind of business are you going to have? Are you opening this as a solo proprietor, which you can, that's a solo individual opening up a business, or do you need a little extra protection? So one of the things that you need to think about is if you're not forming an LLC or a business entity, you're leaving some of your personal finances vulnerable to other business issues that could crop up. And you never know, regardless of the type of business that it is. So one of the most common entities that most businesses will form, especially if it's a smaller business, is a limited liability company. But that's something that we would sit down, talk about what kind of business do you have, what kind of structure do you need, and what kind of formal structure should you try to set up at the outset. So this is something that should be done right up front. The disadvantages of not having a business, for example, with an LLC is one, you're open to personal liability. Mm-hmm. So if you're a sole proprietor or a general partner and your business is sued or has unpaid creditors, you're personally potentially liable for that. So everything that you own, any asset that you have is actually at risk. You could also be liable for business-related activities of your co-owners, if you have any, or any other employees. So having an LLC really changes that equation. As an LLC owner, you might lose everything you invested in the business if things go south. Again, this is the what if scenario, but your personal home, your bank accounts, and other assets are protected. So one of the main benefits of the LLC is that it protects your personal assets. The second is lack of structure if you don't have some type of business entity. So many business partners don't give a lot of thought initially to the details of how are you going to divide responsibilities, for example, profits and losses, receivables, collectibles, invoicing, all of that, disagreements that could crop up. When you have a formal structure at the outset with, for example, a limited liability company, all of that is ironed out in the operating agreement up front. And that sets up all the rules, which really makes it easier for you to run the business down the road, especially for investors, because, all my clients that are investors, they're busy. They're busy doing things, flipping houses, buying, selling, wholesaling, all of that. And it's easier when you already have a structure in place rather than making it up as you go along.
Okay.
One of the other benefits is getting funding. If you're a sole proprietor, you might have limited funding. And Lisa, you could probably speak to this a little bit more too, but banks and investors are sometimes reluctant to loan or invest money in a sole proprietorship or a general partnership versus if you already have a separate LLC, you have separate profit and losses, loss statements, you have balance sheets and things that you can provide that will allow you to proceed with getting a loan under the business entity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. So we talk about LLC versus a corporation. Like, is there a reason why we shouldn't go with the corporation and go with the LLC? Or
most people tend to use an LLC for a smaller business because of the flexibility. So a corporation, and I'll kind of talk about the difference of both, but an LLC is better for maximum flexibility in how you manage and run the business. A board of directors is not required for an LLC, and you can have unlimited owners or members are allowed in the LLC. In terms of protections and taxation, you're not personally liable or on the hook for business liabilities with a limited liability company, and you're taxed only once generally. So you can actually choose how to minimize your taxes with the LLC. It's a pass-through. Generally, it's a pass-through taxation. So the LLC is only taxed once on that. The drawbacks to an LLC to consider is there's ongoing filings. So every year you do have to file with the state of Illinois. You have to maintain that, and there are certain fees that are associated with that so that you stay in compliance. One of the most common is once a year it comes up, and it's so easy to lose track of that. We, for example, are registered agents for some of the LLCs because the owners are busy working.
Yeah.
It's so easy to lose track of that. Before you know it, you're out of compliance because you missed the deadline. So then you need to go and file, pay the penalty and become in compliance. If you're planning on having a bigger company and you want it to go public, so now we're not just talking about small investing, we're talking about like a big company, it's going to go public. An LLC can't go public. And LLCs are generally not recognized globally. So you may be taxed as a corporation if you're operating in other countries, for example. Okay. So in general, they're pretty easy to set up. Corporations, on the other hand, they're unique because it's the best plan if you're planning on going public one day. You can issue shares to the founders and to the employees and to the investors. It's a much more robust business plan in terms of a company. You have shareholders that are allowed, and you can have unlimited shareholders generally. Owners can get preferred stock, so you have stock options with that. Corporations are recognized internationally. So if it's something that an investor is interested in, they can operate internationally. You're recognized internationally, and then you can have preferred investors as well.
Right.
The protections and taxation that they have for a corporation is you're not personally on the hook for business liabilities, but you are taxed twice. So businesses pay at the corporate level. So depending on how much you're making, sometimes it makes sense to have a corporation, sometimes it doesn't, because you're going to be taxed at a corporate level, whatever your incorporated, for example, in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shareholders pay an income on any of the income received. So you're paying as the corporation and then as the individual shareholder as well.
Okay. So because most of the time investors, you really don't have like a full plan or really know exactly how far you're going to go. So it sounds like it's better to start out as an LLC first,
Much easier.
Yeah, much easier. And then are you familiar with like the cost of an LLC? I know we could go on the Cyber Drive, Illinois.
Cyber Drive.
Yeah.
It's generally it starts around $79 plus filing fees for an LLC. I believe the state of Illinois, I think their filing fee is like $149 now.
Mhm.
So it's pretty reasonable in terms of setting it up. And you get your EIN number, you do your articles of organization, your operating agreement on who the members are, and you pay your filing fees. So for investors for real estate, sometimes they have an LLC that's really a holding company for different properties. Sometimes it's an LLC that is used for rentals specifically. So there's a separate stream of income to it. They're much more flexible, in terms of, setting them up, closing them down, and being able to maneuver them than a corporation is, where you have ongoing filings and fees. Then you have management, you have to have certain management for it, and you have to have a board of directors.
Okay. I have a question because I've heard this, and I think it may have even been mentioned in our last Water Cooler Wednesday last week. It sounds like there are different state laws that can have an impact on how friendly the state is to your corporation or to your LLC. So like I've heard that sometimes people will use, I don't know if it's Nevada or
Delaware and Nevada,
Delaware, as their state that they actually start their corporation out of, or the LLC. Do you understand about I don't understand how it works. I've heard a little bit about it, but I don't really understand it.
Sure. So some of the bigger corporations tend to get incorporated in states that are more friendly on a corporate tax level, which is Delaware generally. So you'll see like a Delaware incorporated company, and Nevada, because they have certain tax benefits to doing it that way. But then there's also some drawbacks if you're incorporating, say you're going to do a fix and flip. And that's generally what I see. Fix and flips, or you're going to be renting it out. You incorporate in Delaware, you're paying the fees over there, but then you're practicing in Illinois. It opens you up to different jurisdiction in the event that there might be a lawsuit as well. So sometimes the corporations will open in Delaware because they're incorporated there, and that is their main jurisdiction. So in the event of a lawsuit, they might pull the jurisdiction into that state. For smaller companies, they're looking to do something within the state, and LLC is generally the better type to use.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So before you were talking about like doing rentals and stuff, and I've heard at one point that you should do like maybe a S-series LLC.
Yeah, so we have a number of clients that have multiple properties. So every time you open up an LLC, it's a separate entity. So you're keeping a separate bank account for it. You're paying, you're keeping separate records for it. You're doing separate filings for it. It's a pass-through corporation, so it passes through to the individual members, but it's a separate entity. So if you're going to have, as a rule of thumb, more than 3 properties that you're going to hold, it tends to get a little bit more cumbersome if you are constantly paying filing fees for every single LLC. And that can add up, because if every year, I think the filing fee might be about $200 or so. So if you're constantly paying that, multiply by 3, 4, 5 entities, some investors will have 10, 15 properties. What they'll do is open one LLC and then have series underneath that one main umbrella. So it's basically like an umbrella. It's, Bob Smith LLC, and then underneath there's the series A, B, C, D for each individual property, and that way you're only paying one group of individual taxes on that, and not having the stress of constantly having to pay those fees and costs.
Okay. Also, like I heard that with that allows you to, if somebody sues, like that one, say for instance, I'm at my house, somebody's at my rental, and then they file and they decide that they want to sue, that they can only sue in that series, like property B. They can't.
Exactly, because it's owned by that LLC, so it's that individual protection, not the individual landlord himself or herself, right?
Okay. And so that also means they can't get, like say you talked about it being maybe say 10 properties under that one particular LLC, but they're in a series. So that doesn't spill over to any of the other assets within the series?
It generally wouldn't. I mean, there's something called piercing the corporate veil, which is used with corporations and could be also used with limited liability companies, but it's limited to that one individual property itself. There's always a risk to that. Nothing's 100%, but it does give you that level of protection. Generally, if you're going to have 3 to 4 properties and you're going to keep them, you might want to think about doing a series LLC.
Okay. So I'll tell you all this. I did do a series LLC, and some banks don't accept it. So they wouldn't allow. So I had to do my research as far as my bank.
In terms of opening up an account? Oh.
Yeah, it's a one with a big C in front of it that wouldn't allow.
Oh, okay.
So I had to go to one that started with a number.
Okay.
So that's how I was able to do my series LLC for my properties that I do have. So, so just as a tip, while you're out there, guys, if you have any questions for us, don't forget to just ask them in the chat. We can share with Libby. She can ask some questions. But anything else? I mean, that we need to know about this being in the LLC, like tips, good things?
Mean, with the series LLC, as we talked about, it allows you to segregate and protect your business assets with one parent organization. If you're not going to have numerous assets, or if it's different businesses, different types of businesses, I wouldn't recommend an LLC. So for example, if you're doing fix and flips, that would be under one type of LLC versus if you have like a general contracting business, that you might want to keep that separate.
Okay.
So I wouldn't blend all of them at the same time.
Okay. So somebody, they did just ask this question. I think we just kind of talked about it a little bit, but it said, do you have to have separate LLCs for each rental?
You really don't. You can own it individually. You don't need to have it in the LLC. It does give you the extra level of protection if you do have it in the LLC. With this caveat though, if you purchase the property and you purchased it individually and got a mortgage for that as an investment property, if you now deed it into an LLC or create an LLC into that, and I've seen these situations as well, that could trigger what's called a due on sale clause with your lender. So if you purchased it cash and it's in your name and now you want to put it in an LLC, you do a quick claim, you put it into the LLC and you go from there. But if there's a mortgage that's attached to it, you might not be able to do that right away until it's paid off.
All right. And then maybe they could refinance it under the LLC probably.
You could, and Lisa can probably talk to that a little bit more, but generally the lender is going to want to see a history, a financial history, and a personal guarantee on that.
Yeah, we don't want to become that money. We want y'all to be ready and be able to pay it back.
Right, exactly. So, right. And like the Secretary, I'm just looking it up now, the Secretary of State for a series LLC charges $400 to do the articles of organization. And then
What's
you
that?
can pay an extra $100 to have it expedited. That's like if you need it right away.
Right, but you
Mm.
don't have to do a
No,
series LLC. You could do
not
a
at all.
regular LLC, and especially even just kind of starting out because I think a LLC is maybe just regular. What it does it say there like maybe 175 or something like that?
Yeah, I believe it's like 175. I don't see it here. Oh, I do
Mm,
want to mention though, when you do create the LLC, and specifically a series LLC has to have an Illinois registered agent. So this kind of
Okay.
goes back to your question, Lisa, which with if you're incorporated in a different state, you do still have to have an Illinois registered agent. Generally, that would be like a property manager, or a lot of times it'll be a lawyer, attached to that LLC or that opened up the LLC. But it has to be
Mhm.
someone in Illinois on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
okay, so we do have a question.
Sure.
It says, "Is there a limit to the number of LLCs you can have in the series?"
Not that I'm aware of. You can have, and that's a good question because I have one that has 17 in the
Mm,
series. I don't believe there's a limit to it, and that's the whole point of having the series LLC model, because it allows you to segregate and protect all the assets under one big umbrella. But I don't
mm,
think there's a limit to that.
okay, all
That's
right,
cool. So
all
it
right.
sounds like so I understand now more after this conversation why people choose the LLC. You explained it at the beginning when you said it was flexibility, but all the examples that you've gone through about what that actually looks like, it makes sense now. There you don't have a lot of limitations as far as the property. You don't have a lot of limitations as far as the red tape for who has to
Right.
be
The cost.
involved, for how, yeah, keeping minutes and things like that. It sounds like even that just sounds like it's a lot less tedious. You have an
Exactly.
agent who handles everything for you, so you can be out there just doing your business. You can focus just on
Right.
that, pretty much.
That's exactly it. With an LLC, you need to have just one member, versus with a corporation, you have shareholders and you need to have a board of directors. So there is
Yeah.
more red tape. So if you're going to have a bigger business and growing and expanding it, from a tax perspective and a business asset liability perspective, you might want to consider a corporation. But for ease of use and for the smaller projects and flexibility, the LLC would really be a good thing to consider.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
Well,
all
yay.
right.
We always learn something when we talk to you, Libby.
Thank
I
you, thank you.
know,
I love
right?
talking to you ladies too. Yeah, it's a big thing now. We've created so many LLCs lately because people are investing again, thank
Yeah.
goodness. So it's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thing.
We're seeing that a lot. People, mortgaging to invest, people as
Mhm.
cash buyers to invest, but the market seems to be saturated with
Yes,
investors. They're getting these properties, they're fixing them up, they're flipping them out, and putting them back
for
on the
sure.
resale market.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely Oh, so we got another question actually that says, if you start as an LLC, can you then convert to a corporation?
You would have to close down your LLC and then
Mhm.
open the corporation and move the assets into that corporation. So the short answer is yes, you can. There is more red tape involved with that, both
Right.
from a tax perspective, kind of a compliance perspective, but you can.
Yeah.
It just takes a little more planning.
So
Gotcha.
is there a reason, I guess, like, is there a reason that you might really want to do that? Because if you're dealing with investment properties, maybe you could start a corporation just for the company itself and then maybe have the LLC separately, or I don't
You
know.
could. Well, yeah, you could, but it depends on what you're going to be using the corporation for. So
Hmm.
say the corporation is for general contracting and that's the main business. So you're going to run payroll through that. You're going to be taxed as, for example, maybe an S corporation. That's a type of taxation for it. So you're going to be taxed as the corporation. Then you also will receive, the individual shareholders will also be taxed as well. Then you can have your LLC separately if you're doing just, maybe just holding a property. Like I said,
Right.
some people use it as a method to hold property. They'll purchase it in the LLC, then fix and flip it. So if there ever is any type of liability, it's minimized because the property is owned by the LLC. And you
Okay.
keep that separate from your general contracting business, for example, that's your main bread and butter, where you have, all the profit and losses and payrolls and all that other workman's comp, all that other good stuff.
Right. So say for instance, I buy a house under my LLC Series A, and
Mhm.
then I flip it and I sell it. Is A available for another house, or do we need to then use B, C, or D? Like
If
go on.
you, yeah, if you sell it and it's that entity is gone then.
Okay.
Yeah. But you
So
could just
then,
rename it. It could be, C or D. It doesn't really matter because it's under your series. So you don't have to necessarily replace it with A.
okay. So it's not like, so then could I use that series again, or it's best to just rename it?
I think it's just best to rename it, keep it separate.
Okay. And
Because
then,
also
then that one's gone.
yeah, and kind of from a bookkeeping perspective too, it's easier, if you ever get audited and just have all your bookkeeping for A's separate. When it's done, it's closed, you're moving on. If you get another property, you can rename that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that is a nice benefit. You can do double A, double B, double C.
Mm-hmm. You could do it the property name too, right? Like the property address.
Yeah,
That's
a
what I
lot of
was
the
thinking.
investors will use that, just the property address, 123
Yeah.
Main Street. That's one. And that's an easy way of keeping track of it. You don't have to have some cutesy name or anything like that. It's just easy to have it under the property address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Answered
Yes,
all
yes.
our questions, enlightened us, gave us a lot of really good information. We
Mhm.
appreciate
Thanks for having me.
You're
If there's
welcome.
any other questions, my number's right there. Give me a call,
Yeah.
email me, text me. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions because it's good to sit down and at least do a consultation. Because what's the business plan? What are you planning on doing, both short term and for the long term as well?
Mhm. And they can, and some people may need it or may not, but you will set up their LLC for them, right?
We will. Yes. You can do it on your own, but we can also set it up for you, and we'll do your operating agreement, especially if there's more than one member involved, because that's really what sets out the rules between the partners. So if there's more than one member, we generally will recommend having that individualized and done specifically for your entity and your business.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. All right. Yep. I don't even have my cup because my water is.
I should have got my glass of wine. It's that time of day.
Libby, it's Water Cooler Wednesday, Libby. Water.
She said, hey. Right. But again, Libby, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. You guys can come join us every week here at Water Cooler Wednesday if you need any information from us. We have Lisa White with Geneva Financial, and she's always available for your financing needs. When you're ready to buy the property
or list.
Right, buy or list, give me a call. I'm always available to help you as well. So we're here for you. We ask you to follow us in our Facebook group, which is Water Cooler Wednesday, and come back and join us every week. We take questions there as well. So Libby's always available to answer even questions in the group. So just let us know, and we're excited to have you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. See you guys next Wednesday.
All right. Bye.